أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد وقال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام في خطبة له بعد انصرافه من صفين. The khutbah number 2 that we will be inshallah starting today is the khutbah which Imam gave after he returned from Siffin. Now, as far as this khutbah is concerned, you might see that there isn't any discussion regarding Siffin in this khutbah, which makes you wonder as to what does this have to do with the Siffin. But of course, Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, upon returning, and you know Siffin is a place which is in present day Sham in Syria, where Imam alayhi salatu wasalam battled against Amir Sham, and this was one of the initial battles of the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen after he was, Zahiri Khalifa. And the 4.5 years of Imam's rule, in which Imam faced major wars, amongst them was Siffin, then Jamal, and then of course aftermaths of Jamal were Nahrawan, where the Khawarij came, and amongst those Khawarij was Ibn Muljam, who ended up striking a blow to Amir al-Mu'mineen and giving him shahadat. But inshallah, this khutbah is rather short than the previous one. The first one was lengthy. This one is very short. So maybe in 2 sessions we will be able to cover this khutbah. There are, in this khutbah, there are 3 discussions. As I mentioned here, that after he returned from the Battle of Siffin, in the beginning part of the khutbah, Imam praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That seems like a common theme in Nahj al-Balaghah as well, that begins with the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can imagine that Imam is giving a khutbah. Now, how's he going to start a khutbah? He's going to start a khutbah by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you and I are also encouraged to begin our kalam with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Why? Anything that begins in the name of Allah will be bound to completion, will not remain incomplete if it starts in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam goes along the way by not just starting with, as you see, we mentioned this before in some of the du'as that we have done the tashri' of, where you find that the du'as don't start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, nor does the khutbah starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Why? Because it starts with the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the du'as start with the word Allahumma or Rabbana, and so on and so forth. And we mentioned it before, just to reiterate, the reason is that to be able to keep a distinction between the Kalam Ilahi and Kalam Masoom. Kalam Ilahi starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in Quran. Kalam Masoom does not start with Bismillah, rather starts with the name of Allah, Allahumma or Rabbana, or by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala altogether in the beginning of their speech or their kalam or their khutbah or their saying or their dua. Reason is so that nobody confuses between Kalam Ilahi and Kalam Masoom. And of course, there's so much similarity between the 2 kalams that it is easy for one to fall prey to see that, oh, this may be the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, Imam distinguishes it by clearly not mentioning Bismillah. So there's no other reason aside from this that you don't see any Bismillah in the beginning of the kalam of Masoom. On the other hand, they encourage us to start our kalam with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Why kullu dhi balin lam yabda bismillah fahuwa abtar. Anything that doesn't start with Bismillah remains incomplete. So then why is Imam starting? Well, I gave you the reason, so that nobody confuses between Kalam Ilahi and Kalam Masoom. Let's get right into it. Imam begins by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ahmaduhu استتماما لنعمته واستسلاما لعزته واستعصاما من معصيته. Now keep in mind, background is returning from Siffin. What happened in Siffin? Makru Fareb of Muawiyah that took place in the Battle of Siffin. How Amr As, played his role in the Battle of Siffin. How people were misled in the Battle of Siffin. How Muslimin, many lost their lives. It was a civil war pretty much that happened. The role of Malik Ashtar, getting to the heart of the enemy and grabbing his neck and almost finishing the job until, of course, Makru Fareb that came into play, where they raised Quran and the parts of Quran on the spears, and of course, people were misled by that. Imam said, well, how can we fight someone who's carrying Quran? Well, they're carrying Quran because they're trying to trick you into it. And while you fell for Quran-e-Samit, you neglected Quran-e-Natiq. Here's, on the other side is Quran-e-Natiq, Amirul Mu'mineen. You're neglecting him and you're going after what? Quran-e-Samit. Forgot what Rasulullah had said. Aliyun ma'al Quran wal Quranu ma'ali. Ali is with Quran and Quran is with Ali. So if there's a Quran that is being used to, separate people or keep people away from Ali, that Quran is not going to be helping you. So what does this Quran do? This Quran was able to mislead. I'm using this word purposefully. Quran does not mislead anyone, but this way of using Quran misled people. People were misled by it. As is today is the case. Many can use the ayat of Quran to mislead people, using them in their own favor, like the ISIS did, like the Taliban did. They used the ayat of Quran of irhab and jang and battle and killing the infidels. They used the ayat of Quran for their own agenda to go ahead and do what they were doing. So Imam begins by saying, I praise Allah, seeking completion of His blessing. Al-yawm akmaltu lakum deenukum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. I have completed my ni'mat upon you. Wa istislaman li'izzatihi. Istislam comes from submission, salamity, and the word Islam behind it. That's why one of the meanings of the word Islam is what? Submission to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail make the dua, Rabbana wa ja'alna muslimain lak. Oh Allah, make us to be what? Muslimain. Are they referring to the religion of Islam? Not really. They're referring to the submission to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Submitting to His glory. Wa isti'saman min ma'asiyat. Isti'sam comes from ismat, from being ma'asum. Imam is already ma'asum. And he's, I didn't, sorry. Isti'saman min ma'asiyatihi. And expecting safety from committing his sins. So of course, Imam is ma'asum, but he's making this dua that, oh Allah, give me help. All of these are Bab-e Istif'al. Bab-e Istif'al is used, so these words, istitmaman, istislaman, isti'saman, these are all asta'inu. All of these are Bab-e Istif'al. Bab-e Istif'al means talabe on, or seeking something, asking for something. When you say asta'inu billah, meaning you're seeking assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here Imam says, isti'saman min ma'asiyatihi, and expecting safety from committing sins. Wa asta'inuhu faqatan ila kifayatihi, innahu la yadhillu man hadahu, wa la ya'ilu man adahu, wa la yaftaqiru man kafahu, fa innahu arjahu ma wuzin, wa afdalu ma khuzin. Beautiful words, Kalam-e Amirul Mu'mineen. In the balance in the words and the eloquence in the words, of course, is beyond my pay grade to go ahead and discuss the eloquence of the Kalam of Imam, how it rhymes and how there's qafiyah in it and how the words are meticulously used in it. He says, I invoke His help, being in need of His sufficiency. Never should a person think that he is self-sufficient. What happens? That it leads to being Fir'aun, then it leads to be Qarun, then it leads to be Haman, then it leads to be those who were arrogant and became Abu Jahl. Rasulullah said to him that if you don't listen to me and if you continue in this way, you'll enter Jahannam. He said, I have wealth, I have money, I'll buy Jahannam. How much does it cost? I'll buy it, then I don't have to go into it. So that was the mentality of arrogance. Imam says that, oh Allah, with everything that is in the control of Imam Ma'asum, right? There's a aqidati discussion here that what is our belief of Imam Ma'asum? What is in the possession of Imam Ma'asum? What is Imam capable of doing? Right? There's a whole discussion about that. We believe that Imam has tasarruf in this world. He's able to change the course. He has tasarruf in the takwiniyat of the world, meaning if he wants to do something, and the examples are there. The sun is returning for the sake of Amirul Mu'mineen, and many other such natural phenomena is happening for the sake of Ma'asumeen. Imams were able to produce these miracles and these mu'ajizat. With that said, Imam is capable of doing these extraordinary things you and I cannot imagine, right? Imam is capable of doing all of those things. With that, Imam is capable of doing all of these things. He doesn't show any sort of arrogance. Imagine if you and I receive some power, some worldly power, if we were able to do certain, khariqul adda, extraordinary things, mu'ajazati things. If we had a mu'jaza in our hands, we'll become arrogant the next moment because we have something which people don't have. Ma'asumeen have this ability, yet you see there is still what? They're still down to earth and there's no sign of arrogance in them. He said, I invoke his help, being in need of his sufficiency of protection. He whom he guides does not astray. So if Allah has made his mind that this person is going to be guided, there's no power in the world that can change that from happening. No shaitan can alter that plan, the plan that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established. Yes, that's why shaitan also admits that, I'll misguide everyone except ibadukal mukhlisun. We talked about it in the previous khutbah as well. I'll misguide everyone except those who are mukhlis. Even he recognizes his inability to misguide those who are khalis and sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He with whom he is hostile gets no protection, of course. The one who is the enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not just the enemy of Allah, enemy of the Rasul, enemy of Aimma, enemy of the Malaika, enemy of awliya, all fall into the same category. Here Imam only mentions, وَلَا يَئِلُ مَنْ عَادَاهُ. He whom Allah is hostile gets no protection. وَلَا يَفْتَقِرُ مَنْ كَفَاهُ. And he who he supports does not remain needy. So the moment Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has supported you, there's no faqr or there's no poverty for you. Remember that famous word of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam in Dua Arafah that we recite. ماذا فقد من وجدك وماذا وجد من فقدك, or something similar to that. What has he found? The one who lost you. And what has he lost? The one who found you. What is he saying? He's saying, if you found Allah, then there's no loss. You have not lost anything. So I lost my business, I lost my parents, I lost my this, I lost my that. Did you find Allah? Yes. And you haven't lost anything. The one who lost Allah, on the contrary, there's no connection between him and Allah, and could be on top of the world. As far as the power is concerned, what has he found? Has found nothing. Because he lost Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the word of Imam Hussain in Dua Arafah. Imam says the same, وَلَا يَفْتَقِرُ مَنْ كَفَاهُ. He whom he supports, meaning Allah supports, does not remain needy. So if Allah is supporting you, you're never going to be in need. Praise is most weighty of all that is weighed, and the most valuable of all that is treasured. Then Imam continues by bearing witness that there's no God except Allah. Not that he needs to, but this is something which is a reminder for the people. But don't forget, keep in mind the shahadat, that there's no God except him. I testify that there's no God but Allah, the one. And then it makes you wonder why Imam has to say certain things. Imam has to say some of these things because people had been misled, especially by the propaganda of Amir Sham against Amirul Mu'mineen. that Ali and Ali have nothing to do with the deen and the madhab. قُتِلَ عَلِيٌّ فِي الْمِحْرَابِ. Ali was killed in Mihrab. People said, what was he doing in Mihrab? Did he used to pray? The fact that people would come from Sham and curse at Aimma Athar, making fun of Imam Hassan or making fun of Imam Baqir by their names. And then on the contrary, seeing what? Love and compassion. Right away saying, we've heard something else about you. We thought you were cunning, we thought you were bad, we thought you were evil. But you're on the contrary. You're the most beautiful human beings on the face of the earth. So the propaganda is that Ali has nothing to do with Islam. So Imam is saying what? Is that I testify that there is no God but Allah the One. He has no like. Wahdahu la sharik. And then he says, Shahadatan mumtahanan ikhlasuha mu'taqadan musasuha natamassaku biha abadan. My testimony has been tested in its frankness, and its essence shall store it, facing the tribulations that overtake us, because it is the foundation stone of belief. Why? You're ready for the masaib, you're ready for the musibat, you're ready for the challenges. The moment you believe that there is no God except Him, then there is no turning around. You believe in one God, you'll face challenges. You believe in Prophet, you'll face challenges. You believe in the Imamat Aimma Athar, Imam Amirul Mu'mineen. In one of the other khutbahs of Nahj al-Balaghah, he says, whoever brings Iman onto us, فَلْيَسْتَعِدْ جِلْبَابًا, then be prepared for facing the calamities. You believe in us, you think, well, that's it, I believe in Allah. I should not be facing any problems now. I believe in Prophet, no calamity should ever visit me. I believe in Aimma Athar, I'm aloof and I'm protected from any sort of musibat. He said, no, that's not the case. On the contrary. If believing in them can keep you from musaib, then those whom you're believing, they were facing musaib themselves. How much musibat that Amirul Mu'mineen faced in his life. How much musaib that Imam Hussain faced in his life. Can you even imagine? So don't think the fact that you believe in Allah is wahdaniyah, that calamities will stay away from you. No, you'll be facing the tribulations that overtake us, because it is the foundation stone of belief and the first step toward good actions and the divine pleasure. It is the means to keep shaitan away. Masaib and the ni'mat that are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Musibat awakens you. It is like a revival for you. It opens your eyes. Things were going well and you were flowing in the things and you were heedless, and then there's a shock that awakens you. Shock that personally touches you. And I've seen that in people, personally speaking. Those who lost a loved one. Right away, these people, there's a complete change in their lifestyle, because of the shock that they received from a loss of a loved one. They were completely away from deen and madhab. And then right away, this shock brings them closer to Him. So you shouldn't be waiting for a shock. When the shock is given to a person laying on a hospital bed to revive their heart, you don't need a shock to bring you back. But sometimes these calamities do serve as that. It's a shock. It just brings you back. And the wujood of shaitan is actually a rahmat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how is that possible? It's the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He created what? Shaitan. Bear with me. It's the ni'mat. It's the rahmat of Allah. There's nothing but the rahmat of Allah. Underneath the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have Jannat and you have Jahannam. You have Anbiya and you have Shayateen. Both are rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Both are ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You say, well, I understand Jannat is ni'mat. I understand Anbiya are ni'mat. But how is Jahannam a ni'mat and Shayateen a ni'mat? Well, if it wasn't for Jahannam, you and I would not know that there's a place that exists which is called Jahannam, which has all these problems in it. If we know about it, what we'll do? We'll try and stay away from it. If we weren't told that there's shaitan that is there to misguide you, if we weren't aware of that, we wouldn't stay away from him. It's like a heads up. Someone gives you a heads up, right? Watch out, there's traffic ahead. Watch out, there's, lightning. Watch out, there's, flooding. Watch out, this. What happens when you're given heads up? You're well prepared. Shaitan, you're being told about shaitan. You're being told about Jahannam. What does it serve? It's giving you a heads up. Preparing you, getting you ready for it. Let's bring it to conclusion. And then after testifying that there's no God except Allah, Imam praises and says, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh arsalahu bid-din al-mashhur wal-ilm al-ma'thur wal-kitab al-mastur wal-nur al-sati wal-di'a al-la'mi wal-amr al-sadi izahatan lish-shubuhat. That I also testify that Muhammad is the Prophet. Allah sent him with the illustrious religion, Deen al-Mashhur, effective emblem, symbol of ilm and knowledge, a written book, Kitab al-Mastur. It's not something which is in a, just heard, rather it is something which is written. Nur al-Sati, a light which is rising, fulgent, as it says here, a sparkling gleam, Diya'ul Lame, the Zaw, that Roshni that comes and which illuminates everything, and decisive injunctions in order to dispel doubts. Wal amru sadi izahatan li shubhat. Quran is there to do what? To remove doubts from your minds, to get rid of any shubha that you may have had up until this point. Now Quran comes and removes that shubha. Wa ihtijajan bin niyat wa tahdhiran bil ayat wa takhwifan bil mathulat, and present clear proofs and administrate warning through signs and to warn of punishment. So all this is in Quran. Quran tells us about qisas, Quran tells us about punishment, Quran tells us about Jahannam, Quran tells us that you should stay away from this is a shubha, you should refrain from all of these things. It's a clear sign is Furqan. One of the names of Quran is what? Furqan. Furqan is what? The one which decides or is decisive between right and wrong. Haqq and batil ki jo tafriq kare, usko Furqan kehte hain. So Quran is that Furqan. Quickly, one more before I put you all to sleep. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. नहीं, after returning. Bada insarafi, वापस आके. Inshallah we'll do this page and then we'll conclude. وَالنَّاسُ فِي فِتَنٍ. Here Imam then gets to what is happening. This might give you some idea of the aftermath of Siffin, or in fact the time before the Bi'sat of Rasulullah. Rasulullah before announced his Bi'sat at the age of 40, this is what people were in. وَالنَّاسُ فِي فِتَنٍ إِن جَزَمَ فِيهَا حَبْلُ الدِّينِ. At that time, people had fallen in vices, whereby the rope of religion had been broken, and the pillars of belief had been shaken, and principles had been desecrated. System had become topsy-turvy, upside down, and openings were narrow, the passage was dark, guidance was unknown, and darkness prevailed. Allah was being disobeyed, shaitan was given support, and belief had been forsaken. So this is the story of Qablas Bi'sat. Before Rasulullah announced his Bi'sat at the age of 40, this was what was happening in Makkah at that time. There was no rule and law. There was lawlessness. People were living in darkness. Darkness prevailed. Guidance was unknown. And more importantly, Allah was being disobeyed. And shaitan was being obeyed. As Imam says towards the end, he says, Usiya ar-Rahman wa nusira ash-shaytan. Although the translation says that Allah was being disobeyed, Imam uses the word Rahman, one of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a reason. Imam didn't say Usiyal Ma'bud or Usiyal Allah masalan. He didn't use the word Allah. He said Usiyal Rahman. Wa nusra shaitan. Maybe the qafi of Rahman and shaitan. That's the reason maybe Imam is using it, so that it goes with that. But shaitan was given support. How's shaitan given support? How you and I sometimes become support to shaitan. Just think about that. Sometimes our actions are there just to support the cause of shaitan. And sometimes our actions are there to support the cause of Allah. Man yansurullah, Quran says, right? Whoever helps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can we help? Allah is almighty. No, we can't help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're actually, in turn, doing things to further the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you say, nusra shaitan, shaitan is being helped. Shaitan, the story of Sheikh Murtaza Ansari, the one who wrote Makasib al-Muharrama, he said he saw a dream, or not he, but someone in his time saw a dream, that shaitan has all these different ropes. And there was a big rope, huge rope, and that was torn. And there were some smaller ropes, there were longer ropes, there were shorter ropes. So this guy, he asked Shaitan, what are these ropes for? He said, well, these are the ropes by which, Shaitan said, I throw it to people and then I pull them towards me. And he said, what's that big rope that you got? Fat, big rope, thick one. He said, well, that's the rope that I used for Sheikh Murtaza Ansari last night. He said, what happened? He said, well, the rope broke. I couldn't break Sheikh Murtaza Ansari. And then he said out of joke, which one is mine? He said, I don't need a rope for you. I just call you and you come running to me. You're my biggest support. He went to Sheikh Murtaza. He said, I saw this dream. What is the reality of this dream? What happened? He said, last night I was in need of some money. Of course, I have all of this homs and wujuhat al-shari'i with me that I can easily access and fulfill my personal needs. And I was bound to. And people would not have blamed me had I used it because it was in necessity, in need. But I refrained from doing so. I said, let that be the need. Allah will take care of it. I did not touch the amanat of the people. He said, that was the string of shaitan that I broke. That's what you saw in your dream. So sometimes we become what? We become the aza and jaware of shaitan. Inshallah, we'll stop over here. وَخُذِلَ الْإِيمَانِ, and the belief had been forsaken. Inshallah, we'll continue from this moment on next week. وَآخِرُ دَعْوَانَا الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ.